Derek, can you hear me? Derek, can you hear me?
Yeah, you got my text. I got your text. I haven't. Sorry. I thought I were able to make it tomorrow again.
I can-
It's because I don't have it.
And then they settled
Duh.
a town called Truck.
Dan.
What pistol?
You're frozen for some reason.
I'm frozen?
Oh, there you go.
Down.
Yeah, are you able to make it at 3 tomorrow?
So we're all connected to the same.
Am I able to make it what?
At 3 tomorrow?
Yes, no problem. I'm gonna drive halfway back tonight.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Thank you.
These are for you.
Okay.
I don't think this has much to do with
I can
us. I got small ones I was seeing was they didn't get their gift card, and then I need to go from this because.
Okay.
Let's see, what do I need somebody else on me too?
Well, I'm gonna call this work session of the select board to order. We have a quorum. Hi, Dan.
Hey, everyone.
All right, and so we'll start with an update from GEI
Hold on.
on the harbor. Hello, GEI.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. I noticed sharing was not turned on. I just had a quick presentation I was gonna share as part of the
Yeah.
update.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, can you see that?
Yep.
Great. Okay, so this is a quick check-in for February, just kind of talk about where we've been, where we're going, some of the feedback that we heard at the community forum that we held at the end of January. So again, in end of January, did a site assessment looking at the town dock area. We did it at high tide. We also did it at low tide. And then we held a community forum to solicit feedback from the community about priority uses of the site. And we also heard sort of expanded viewpoints about what's important to the community on a larger scale waterfront uses. So that was great feedback. And as we look at the town dock area specifically, what we have identified as these assets are the boat ramp, the Acadia Pier, the town dock, the bathroom, parking, restaurant, and again, larger scale along the waterfront, economic development, having this be a destination for yacht clubs. And so how can we sort of work in improving the town dock in the light of the flooding scenarios that we've put together? And so that's including the priority uses. And then the next steps are these preliminary adaptation strategies. So just as a reminder, I put these maps in again. These have not changed from when we initially presented them, but this is the king tide. This is the January storm. These are the, so this is the 1%.
Sorry, your slides aren't moving.
Oh. On my screen they are. So I guess I will go out of the slideshow.
What slideshow?
Yeah, we're still on the first page.
Oh, here we go. This happened last time. How's that?
Much better. Thank you.
Okay. So I won't have the slideshow. I'll just have to look at it from my screen, the PowerPoint. Sorry about that. I don't know why there's a glitch there somehow. So again, these are the flood maps. This is the January storm. This is the king tide that you're seeing, and basically the 1% annual chance still water maps and what you experienced again last January. This is the highest annual tide that you see about twice a year. And then as we look into the flood scenarios for the midterm, we have 2050, start to see that flood water start to move toward inland. 2070. Oh, excuse me, go back. and then 2100. So going back to those identified assets, I just wanted to highlight first looking at the boat ramp here, what can be done? You know, this is a tricky situation, limited land area to work with. So when we looked at it, this is just the bulkhead along the boat ramp, and here's a section of the ramp. It's obviously an important part of the waterfront. There was 2014, the conditions assessment done that had some recommended potential scenarios to realign, widen, and extend. That does require getting an easement from the neighboring property, which I have heard was unsuccessful. So looking at what you can do in the current location, there's limited options. But again, we want to take into the context that this is an important part of the waterfront. So public access is extremely important. And as we've started to look at some adaptation strategies, are there alternative locations? I've started to dive into some, town-owned properties, and there's obviously limited. But looking at some of the larger waterfront parcels, they're owned or have an easement through Maine Coast Heritage Trust, and they, do have a mission of public access in some areas. So is that something that, we target outreach to Maine Coast Heritage? Or are there, waterfront residents that maybe would be interested? So these are sort of some things to start to consider if, when we look at the flood scenarios, this ramp does become a bit inaccessible in those mid and longer term flood scenarios. So even if the ramp does stay here, work would need to be done to have it to work. And this was I pulled this from the 2014 work that was done. I'm just showing some of those different realignments. I know Derek and he had mentioned this last week that he saw some plan, and I did find it. But again, that does require that easement. I don't know when outreach was conducted, if it's worth reaching out again, but these are some things to think about. This is just a different alignment with no boarding floats. This has boarding floats on the left side and then boarding floats on the right side. And that kind of gives you a new approach to the ramp. It widens it, so it does accommodate better flow for the site, basically. Next assets identified here, Cadia Pier, the town dock area. What are we looking at for what can be done for those? I think, you obviously did work this past year, 2024, the through flow decking, which was a great surface material to help kind of with the uplift of floodwaters. Again, those flood scenarios are showing flooding in the mid and long-term scenarios. So just initial assessment, raising that deck elevation to accommodate the predicted sea level rise for these. But as we think about that, what we have on, in the background is this plan that is in the files that we've received. And this is the town dock expansion plan. So when we start to think about adaptation strategies, we don't want to, not consider this as a future plan. So, this is sort of an area that we're working through internally, but, as we think about if you were to add in these additional floats, longer piles, you could upgrade the gangway connections, concrete floats, as we mentioned, to act as a wave attenuation. Those are some things that we'd want to think about because, we're not putting in a new, this dock expansion to, present to the town as here's what it looks like. I mean, that would, I think, be worth having additional community feedback, capacity questions, use capacity, commercial versus recreational, that sort of thing. So, but we want to keep that in mind when we think about our adaptation strategies. And then moving along, the bathroom. So looking at this site, there was some talk that, maybe it could be relocated, but what we heard from the community forum was that it's important to have it in this location. It seemed to be the majority opinion. And so, what can we do to accommodate it in this location? And currently it's seasonal. Could you rebuild it, make it a year-round, elevate it? And then what we also heard, some important uses or future desires of the town would be kayak racks or bike racks. So could you kind of do a two birds with one stone approach where you are able to elevate that bathroom to basically get it out of the flood waters, and then also have those kayak bike rack underneath. So it's kind of utilizing that space because we are working within limited, space constraints here. Parking, obviously important part. Consideration for this would be, the higher, kind of regrade it to match some of the higher grades that are, when you are along the water, the lower grade there. Let's go to my next slide here. So elevate portions of the parking area to address some of the flooding, raise curbs, berms, direct the flood water away from key areas. Could you accommodate additional parking in other locations? Kind of pair that with a shuttle service. If you do, have this dock that you're having people come, could there be those shuttle services that would, allow you to take some of this impervious area that's there now and make it more of a green space, maybe along the waterfront. And then to address sort of the temporary flooding, putting in these temporary flood barriers. When we looked at at low tide, this outfall pipe here, one thing would be to put a backflow preventer on. That's kind of the obvious fix there for that. And then just kind of jumping into the community forum, a lot of what we heard for uses were a lot of passive use, lunch, going in the morning, sitting, just watching the ocean. That seemed really important to people. So I think, that works well with flood adaptation. If you could add in some additional green space and sort of, we're looking at this kind of in the lens through the town dock, but taking the larger approach of what assets are more throughout the town to, like, are there additional parking areas or lots that the town has? One thing we heard too with that bathroom is, not just the bathroom, but could you add showers and laundry? Increasing the economic activity with a yacht club destination, maybe additional amenities in the town, boat ramp improvements, kind of improve that flow. Parking is an issue. So, and I want to say all of this kind of walking away from the site assessment, though, I think the real priority that I want to get across is that in 2014, there was a condition assessment done of the site. And so, we're going on 10 years since that's been done. And from some of the reports and the images I saw in that, the retaining wall, the sheet pile here, I do think that another assessment is really a priority before, we're going to recommend these adaptation strategies, but I think the town really should have another conditions assessment done to look at, the sheet pile, the coating, monitor any of the deterioration, and so that you have a really good idea about what the foundation of the town dock, the condition that it's in, before you start to consider some of, maybe the dock expansion project and so forth. So just some images from our site assessment that we took at low water. The anoids here, you'd want to get those assessed again to just, again, monitor deterioration, some corrosion at the top. And I think that's our first and foremost recommendation. So the next steps where we're going from here is we've been in discussions with Derek to maybe do an interim community forum to really kind of take those ideas that we heard at the first one, but bring them back to the town dock and focus on the priorities, basically like a dot exercise where we have categories, the assets and what's important to the community. And then internally, what we're doing is meeting at GEI, the engineers, myself, and coming up with some of the concept designs for some of the critical assets there on the town dock area. And that's what we're working on now, and then putting this all into a final report, and then either a second or third. It depends if we get the second community forum together, but we'll have the presentation of what we're looking at for next steps for the town. So that's just our quick update. Happy to take any questions.
Would you be the organization that would do this assessment of where things are at now? Like this doc, like if to get an updated doc assessment, like they had in 2014, who would do that?
I mean, our firm certainly has the capabilities to do that. It doesn't have to be us, but we'd certainly be interested in a proposal if that's what you would want to do. But it is an engineering firm that do those sorts of analysis.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
One thing we did talk about, Lisa, with that other forum is we would push off the ending of this or the final forums later, so this report wouldn't come out. Like right now, we're talking about getting it like April, so they'd push it further into May to get it done, but as I said, I could talk to the state and make sure that they're okay with it, but I think that's what we're looking at, is to give more time for those things to happen.
Sure.
And I'm glad you found that relocation of
Yes.
boat launch. I knew I found it, that was something I did when I first, like 60 days of scouring through all this.
Yeah.
So like, I knew I didn't dream it up.
Yeah, I know, I saw that too. It was like there's an easement and and then I finally saw that. I was like, oh, that was the like realignment that you were referring to. So it's a good idea. It's just a matter of can you get the easement? But
Right.
And so we couldn't get the easement
I don't recall what it was.
first time, and
Right.
but we haven't spoken with that property
Yeah.
owner since, so. Okay. Another thing.
Anything else? Anybody out there in
Lisa,
the
thank
audience?
you so
Oh, Mark's got a
much.
question.
Mark always had a question.
Mark,
Oh.
Mark.
Sorry, I'm trying to talk corner with people. So, no, regarding that issue, a lot has changed since 2014. The neighbor on the other side is lifting his building 6 or 7 feet. That's a real change. There have been changes to that particular property. And in the end, hopefully you could end up with a negotiated settlement, but is, I hate to use the word, but it's eminent domain, a possibility. Is there a real public need for that property? That's a sticky, and a slippery slope, I should say. It's a sticky situation, but how key would it be to the advancement of this plan? The other question is. not a
Can't believe you
question.
mentioned the ED.
Yeah, well,
You went there.
somebody needed to, I've been out to Damascotta a number of times, and they have relatively new public bathrooms, and they're elevated. And you have to take a ramp, it's universal, everybody has to take a ramp to get up there, and they must have done that for the same reason. It's very new, and it's probably raised 3 feet plus. It's just a model to look at.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. Anything else? Okay, thank you, Lisa, so much. Thank you
yeah,
very
thank
much.
you. Okay, be in touch. Bye.
Yeah,
Hey, the Castine Fire Association donation.
Yeah,
Chief Spratt,
how are you today?
great, how are you today?
I'm doing fine, thanks. So I'm here wearing my hat, obviously, as the president of the nonprofit organization, Castine Fire Rescue Volunteer Association, which is a booster organization of the fire department. We're a 501c3 organization. We solicit funds from the donors to the town, and then we turn around and use those funds to try to augment or offset costs so that we reduce the tax burden that the fire department experiences, et cetera. We have been able to build a bit of a war chest up of funding. And in doing a needs analysis and looking at some of the capabilities of the fire department, it was suggested by the leadership that Witherly Woods is a prime focus of concern as far as access and firefighting. This has been highlighted by the situation out in California and such. So it was suggested that the Fire Association look at leveraging some of our donated funds towards the replacement of the all-terrain vehicle that was donated a number of years ago to us, and that we have successfully used a number of times to get access to the far reaches of Witherly Woods where we can't get access by other vehicles. And certainly in several of the fires that we've had out there in the past, we've actually ended up borrowing vehicles from townspeople, utility vehicles and such, to be able to get access back there. The item that we had, or the utility vehicle that we have, is a battery operated one that poses a number of challenges. And at this point it's inoperative. We're not able to get the one, particularly in the weather with the batteries. And we have felt that to put further town funds into replacing those batteries is throwing bad money after bad money. But what that vehicle did prove to us was having something similar to that would be beneficial to us, not only to move personnel in and out, but doing some brainstorming, if we were able to turn that vehicle into having some kind of firefighting capability organic to itself, that would really enhance our ability to get out to the woods and potentially deal with something quickly without having to run thousands of feet of hose and such that we don't currently have. So, having said that, we put a committee together. I've got a bunch of energetic Maine Maritime Academy students that have been putting in quite a bit of work. And the end result of that is we are looking at a new gas-powered 6-seat 4-wheel drive utility vehicle. And probably an 18-foot enclosed trailer that we would be able to store that vehicle in, which would then also solve our problem of where to store the vehicle until such time as we can get a facility that will have room for it. We're probably on about our 4th temporary garage shed, and every time the wind picks up, those things shred, and it costs hundreds to thousands of dollars that we've spent on those. What we have come up with, it's not quite finalized yet, but we have an 85-gallon tank that would fit into this with a pump and a firefighting capability. It would also have a place for us to put a Stokes litter, which is a stretcher basically, where if we had somebody fall or get hurt out into the far reaches of the woods, we would be able to recover them and then carry them out on the vehicle, which we also have had happen in the past, and it's a real concern for us in the future, particularly in the summertime when we don't have our college students here, and we have a limited number of volunteers, all of which are over 50. So, having said all that, I've had a meeting with Karen and discussed with her how we would facilitate the fire association purchasing these items and then conveying them over to the town. And because the vehicle and the trailer were going to have to be registered, my suggestion to Karen was that we have the town actually purchase the items, and I will then either reimburse or in advance provide the funding from the fire association to the town. That would simplify the transfer and the titling process and might end up saving us. I'm not sure where we would fall with excise tax and that type of thing. We are a nonprofit, but if the town makes the purchases directly, it's a lot cleaner. So the aggregate donation is going to be in the neighborhood of about $50,000. This will be the largest endeavor that we've ever taken. We try to make a point of not carrying a lot of funds from year to year because that's not our purpose. Our purpose is to raise funds and then use them to fulfill our mission of augmenting the fire department. And so we really try not to carry much money over from year to year. But in the last few years, we have had a little bit that we have carried over. So really, it was just suggested by Karen and Derek that I come and present this to the select board to, one, make you aware of the initiative that's underway, and 2, seek your permission to continue with Karen for the capital donation.
Well, it sounds like to me that it makes a lot of sense. And I've had a lot of concerns about fires and accidents in Witherly Woods, and this certainly would help with that. Jack, if you do use these funds, does this mean you're depleting this pool of money? And how much money do you like to have in there?
We usually try to carry probably about $3,000 or $4,000 just in general operating funds.
Okay.
And so this would bring us down pretty much to that level.
Okay.
However, we feel that with the visibility of the community we see, and the fact with everything else going on, that the association is really trying to find something that we can do that's productive to the town and will help to encourage people to use the woods and such, that we feel that our donations will continue. And if not, we're willing to take that gamble because we really feel that having this type of asset, although not mandatory from a town fire department standpoint, certainly provides augmented safety and usability from our standpoint, which falls right in line with what the Fire Association's mission is.
This is fantastic. And having that litter is great, thinking that to get people out in case there's a search and rescue kind of a situation where somebody falls down. Or breaks an ankle hiking on the trail or whatever.
Well, it could very easily be one of us.
Yeah, I mean, it's. Don't say that.
No, I mean, self-rescue is a consideration.
But self-rescue or, you know, and having the water tank, that's fantastic. Oh, I just thank you
Yeah.
for your
I think
generosity.
it's just win-win.
Yeah,
Okay, great.
Yeah,
So-
I'm 100% behind it.
Okay, great. So with your permission, we'll proceed. I've got a meeting tomorrow where they're going to be bringing to me some final numbers on different things. Once that's done, I have to pitch it to the fire chief to make sure that he's content with what we've done, and then from that point, the board will make a final decision. Although I'm pretty confident that the board is in support of this endeavor, so then we'll come back to you at some point and let you know when it's coming.
thank you.
Derek, do we have to vote on this at a regular meeting or do we?
We will at a regular meeting, once they give us the, I can see it happen almost in unison, like I was telling Karen. Have them make sure they're talking about purchasing it in the name of the town, and then they'll give us the gift of the money, and we'll end up just using that money to pay for the machine.
Right,
So
we could,
it
we
will
could
be
do
coming
it.
out.
We'll know what the final numbers are before we commit to anything.
It's great. I would just like to express gratitude to the town residents and organizations who continue to support the fire association, because that's what makes these kinds of donations happen. And over the years, you all have been so transparent in terms of the specific things you're looking to purchase when you fundraise, and then applying those funds to those items, that I think it's developed a great level of trust within the community for people who continue to donate year to year. And I think this kind of vehicle and this service, it's gonna help. It will be open to everyone, whether it be fire-based or injury-based, and so I do think it's a win-win. So thank you to all of you.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Mark, did you have a question?
Now, Jeff, when would you anticipate, if you get to go ahead, having this operation?
We are really hoping to have this in service by this summer season.
That's what I was wondering.
We have to kind of sequence things. We're actually gonna have to order the trailer first, because we don't want to get the other equipment before we have somewhere to store it out of the weather. And there's nowhere for us to put it where it currently is. I have a feeling that by, hopefully by May, June timeframe, this asset will be available in town before the peak season.
I'm just saying it's a good time to roll something out because we have summer residents showing up. I imagine they're a pretty good source of support. And to see something rolled out might engender more generosity.
Well, again, we'll
Maybe
see.
a little show and tell.
That's-
If we have all the items, purchasing, that would be great for people to see.
Take people for a ride one time.
Sure, of course,
Yeah.
no, it'll be great. And having the trailer also means that we can take it off neck, which is something that we've
Yes.
never been able to do with the current vehicle.
Okay, and Jack, thank you for all you do.
Thanks,
Thank you
I
so
appreciate it.
much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Thanks for letting me
Thank
be
you.
part of the meeting today.
Have a good evening.
All right, you too.
Come back again.
So we're gonna swap the Maytown meeting conflict, and we're gonna go on to solar, Ted. Would
Okay,
you like to talk to us about? this?
sure. Is it okay if I go up there?
Absolutely.
I don't know what's the best way to do this, Dave.
Oh,
Here.
Did you already join? Are you
Yeah,
still on?
okay.
You
Let's see if I
can
can-
share your screen, or I can play when we were a kid, you can, back when we had film street strips, you can be like, beep, and I'll advance the slide for it.
Maybe when you were a kid.
You didn't have those?
No.
A pen and paper.
They don't have projectors.
Well, that's what I had, like little slides, and they'd say beep, right, they go beep, and you'd hit the slide right to the next one.
Yeah.
I know.
Or even the little round ones there, the little ones,
There's.
you're right. I actually remember as a kid, we had one of those that was like Dracula or something, and I actually made a recording to go along with it and made the beeps on it. So we knew where to advance it. I read the story. In a Dracula voice.
Is that?
Yeah, I think
Probably
so.
me.
Oh, I'm like trying to get them, I'm like, it won't work, and then I realized that.
Okay. Good.
Let's see, so Ted is, which one is he, right there? Can't see now.
Recording in progress.
So I wanna mute him
He's
because,
the bottom. There he is.
I should not have said that.
right, hold on. Alright. Mute. Is that better? No? Is that
I should have
a mute,
declined.
or kill your sound,
Yeah,
actually, turn your
Turn
sound
your
down.
volume all the way
So
down.
you're muted now, it's just your sound needs to be, muted.
Has to do it in slideshow.
Right. Alright. You. Testing. Is it coming down? Okay.
Thank you for your
It's
patience.
gone. There we go,
guys.
look at that.
This is great. Appreciate it.
I love when you're at a meeting with like 20 people are all trying to tell the person how to mute things. And they're all stepping over each other so they can't hear anything. And you can see their panic going on. I'm just trying to do it. You're all talking to me at once.
Those early days of COVID. Everybody trying to learn Zoom.
And of course, well, the worst is when it strobes and it starts getting loud till it has the loud screech type thing and you know it's coming. Feedback. Oh,
That's me again. I think this time
let's see. Oh,
I'm gonna
I'm
stop.
sitting here trying, I keep using my touchpad and I'm like, uh-oh. But, cause it's not my touchpad that controls it. So I'm like, why is it not moving? All right, there you go. There you are. You're quiet, so that's good. Now just share. Oh, yeah. and then double click, screen share. There you go. Look at that.
Nicely done.
Gonna kill this over here.
All right. Okay, well, thank you for your patience, you guys. I wanted to come back up and meet with you guys in person, second time. Because I really think this could be a very good project for the town, for the townspeople. I want to make sure I can answer all of your questions about where we are right now. Let you know what's some of the stuff that's happening in Augusta, because it does factor into this project. And at our last meeting, we kind of, I think, decided, or you folks decided, that probably the most applicable size project to consider was that 600 kW project, which would require you to find off-takers. And my recommendation would be to start with residents of the town of Castine. So we're gonna focus on that 600 kW project size. So that depicts the project there on top of the landfill. So we would want to use the flat portion of the landfill, which is on the top of it. We cannot penetrate the cap with posts or drill into that cap. So we have to use ballasted racking and weigh that racking down onto the surface of the landfill with concrete blocking. And so we want to be on as flat a section as we can be. We also have to put perimeter fencing around this array. And so we want to make sure that your maintenance people can still mow around that landfill, mow the slope part of it, as well as inside the fenced in area. So we think that we can get a 600 kW project on this site. We don't think we can get a bigger project on this site. And potentially it might have to be a little bit smaller just to utilize the space ideally. The report that you had conducted for you guys, I think they had assumed that the space would accommodate a much larger project. And it really can't because of the slope. And so this is about, I think, the largest size project you could get at this site.
Okay.
So the size of it is gonna be 899.2 kilowatts DC, that's direct current, 600 kilowatts AC. We talked about that. The annual production, year one annual production is gonna be 1,067,000 kilowatt hours and change. And so that annual production is going to decrease at about 0.5%, a little less than 0.5% per year. So when we go through the pro forma, you'll see that, you know, year one production is highest, and then it goes down at about 0.5% each year thereafter. So you're still getting very good production after 25 years, even after 30 years, but you know, not as good as it was as you got when the project was new, the panels were new.
And is that's just typical of all the panels, this just happens over time?
Yes, yeah, I mean, so the technology, as the technology has gotten better, that degradation number has decreased.
Okay.
And so, you know, panels that we're getting today are much better than panels we got 10 years ago and even 5 years ago. And they're always working to improve the production of those panels. So this project would use about 1,854 485 watt panels. It would be set up as a net energy billing kilowatt hour credit project. So we talked about that at the last meeting. It would be front of the meter, so a standalone project. 18% of the kilowatt hours would be assigned to the town's small general service meters, SGS meters. And the remaining 82% of the production from the project, the way that I've drawn up this scenario, 82% of that production would go to residential meters. You know, they could be town of Castine residents. They don't necessarily have to be. They can be any residential meter within the CMP utility district. But my recommendation is going to be to, you know, try to involve as many residents in Castine as possible with this project. So any questions on the project details?
And
Yeah,
maybe
so if someone signs up, a resident signs up, do they
Yeah.
pay anything, or they just get benefit?
They just get benefits.
So what
So there's
happens if we put it out to the town and, you know, like there's a capacity for 160 residents and we get 400 residents apply? Do we just have a pool? I mean, we don't want to be pissing people off.
Well, one thing that you could do, I mean, I'm gonna move on to the next slide because I want to address that because that's a very, very good question. So I want everyone to understand what the rates are and how the discount would apply to the rates and how you would generate the revenue from the project. But if you look in the upper right corner, 875,000 kilowatt hours would be available for residential offtake. So if we're talking 6,000 kilowatt hours per home, that would be about 145 homes. So 6,000 kilowatt hours of annual electricity usage is the average in the state of Maine for Maine households. Those could be apartments, those could be homes. Let's say you had twice that number of Castine residents express interest in being a part of the project. So it was 290 versus 145. Then you could give each one of the participants 3,000 kilowatt hours of credits a year, so they wouldn't, you know, get the full benefit, but you would be able to benefit more residents, more households. So you could do it that way. You wouldn't have to leave anybody out, and you know, everyone would get some of the credits that are generated by that project. Not enough to offset their entire usage, but offset a portion of it, maybe 50%, 40 to 60%, depending on what their electricity use is. So that's very easy to achieve. So the rates for small general service meters, so these are the 2025 rates. The supply rate is 10.61 cents per kilowatt hour. That's the standard offer rate. So you guys have some of your meters that are on a contract, a supply contract with Constellation Energy through Maine Power Options. They're all right about the same. So I felt it was safest to use the standard offer rate for supply. And then the delivery rate for 2025 for SGS meters is 9.855 cents. And so combined, that's 20.468 cents. So that would be the value that you would see for each kilowatt hour of generation that you apply to your small general service meters, the town's meters. And so you've got 192,000 right around kilowatt hours of load attached to those 15 meters today. So that would be about $39,323 in avoided costs that you would benefit from.
Per year.
Per year, that would be year one. And so we use a 2.5% escalator for escalating the costs of electricity on an annual basis. For your residential meters, or for the residential meters, the supply rate is the same, so 10.613 cents. The delivery rate is higher, it's 12.803 cents. And so that combines for 23.416 cents per kilowatt hour of cost. If you offer your residential subscribers a 20% discount rate, and that's what I would recommend you offer. It's a good rate, it's better than the standard market rate that developers offer the general public. And so I think that would be a very good rate to offer. That would decrease your realized revenue per kilowatt hour to 18.733 cents. So that 20% discount rate off of the 23.4 cents, that's 4.683 cents. And so the value per kilowatt hour that you would see, the town would see in revenue would be 18.73 cents. And
Let me just interrupt for a second. So in this case, will the residents pay the town the instead of getting a bill from Central Maine Power, they're going to get a bill from the town of Castine that they will pay for electricity?
Yeah.
I'm going to propose that you have a firm called Ampion Renewable Energy take care of the revenue management of this project.
Okay.
And so they would collect the bills and the residents would receive an invoice from Ampion for the solar credits generated by your project on their behalf. And they would pay 18.73 cents per kilowatt hour, the value of which would be 23.416 cents. Ampion would collect a small fee off that, and I'll explain that fee to you. And then the town of Castine would just get a monthly check from Ampion for the value of the kilowatt hours that were sold to the kilowatt hour credits that were sold to the residential users, the residential off-takers.
And so when this is all said and done, what's the payback on the upfront cost and I know that most solar projects are like 7 to 8 years in ROI. Are we still in that neighborhood?
Yeah, you're still in that neighborhood. Yep, and I'll go get to that slide next.
Okay.
But so at 18.73 cents per kilowatt hour would be your revenue. You have 875,000 kilowatt hours going to residential off-takers. So that 875,000 kilowatt hours times 18.73 cents results in revenue of $163,955.
And if they use more power than that, they're gonna get it off the grid from CMP, right? So they're gonna pay whatever that
Right, so
standard operated.
their allocated kilowatt hour solar credits are fixed, so they would receive a percentage of the production from the project. That percentage would be fixed. The actual kilowatt hours would depend on the production of the project, and that varies, throughout the year. But yes, yeah.
Okay.
So everyone understand those numbers and how we get those revenue and avoided cost numbers? Okay.
Are we frozen?
Yeah, we just froze for a second.
Okay.
There we go.
All right, so if you were to make a capital purchase, so there is a cost in here for acquiring your subscribers. And so the numbers are a little bit different than the last ones I shared with you because of that cost is in there. So you're still looking at that year one generation, 1,067,000 kilowatt hours. The blended value of each credit is gonna be 19 cents, 19.045 cents. So that's 18% at the SGS rate and 82% at the Resi rate, discounted at 20%. The preliminary, I'm gonna call this preliminary project cost, 2.315 million. That's $2.58 per watt. You would benefit from the direct pay grant that we've already talked about. That would be valued at $694,000. The simple payback, if this was a capital purchase, would be 7.9 years. And the internal rate of return would be 11.9%. The 25-year cumulative net cash flow, and I've got a cash flow statement at the end of this to go through with you, but the 25-year cumulative net cash flow for the town would be $4.179 million.
That's a nice number.
Yeah. So if you finance this project, so the only difference between this slide we're looking at now and the last slide is this includes financing. So the Maine Municipal Bond Bank will finance a project like this. Typically, when they go out to the market for a sale, they've accumulated 40, 50, $60 million worth of project value to go out to market with. Last year they got rates of 3.25%, 3.5%, either at 20, 25 or 30-year terms. So I just used a rate of 3.5% at a term of 25 years. The annual debt service would be $140,486. So that would be the debt service for this loan, against this loan. The 25-year cumulative net cash flow for this project, where you use Maine Municipal Bond Bank for financing, would be 2.982 million. I have an upfront cost here of 6 cents per kilowatt hour for subscriber acquisition. So for acquiring those residential subscribers, if you did not want to engage in that process at all, you did not want to put any work or man hours or effort into that, then you could hire a company that goes out and finds residential subscribers. So one company, maybe you've seen their ads on television. They're very active in the Maine market. They've done a phenomenal job since Maine's Community Solar Program came into effect in 2019. They're called Maine Community Solar. And so they would charge about 6 cents per kilowatt hour to go out and find subscribers to participate in this project for you. If you wanted them to focus on the town of Castine, they would, but theoretically they could find subscribers, anywhere within the CMP utility district. So,
do we have the opportunity to say, okay, let's see if we can do it first, like we do a public announcement and we say we're looking for 145 residents, we explain it, we have a public hearing. If we could do it ourselves, we can bypass that.
Absolutely. So with a $5,000 to $10,000 budget, if you engage in an effective community engagement campaign to invite residents of Castine to participate, and you get your 145 households to sign up, then you do not need to pay Maine Community Solar to find subscribers for you. But this cost here is built into this pro forma. Just so you know, worst case scenario, this is what it would cost to fill that project up.
So that's just to fill it up, and then Ampion after that does the year over year
Right.
at the $13,000 rate, $14,000 rate.
Yeah.
So the 52.5 is a one-time.
Well, it is, but what about if people decide they pull away?
That's what I'm
So
wondering.
like if standard offer goes
My next
cheaper or
question.
something, I'm guessing we have to adjust our rates to deal with that too. Up or down if possible, but that's what I'm wondering about.
Well, your subscribers will always be paying a 20% discount rate off of the standard offer rate.
Okay, so if the standard offer rate adjusts, then that's our base mark of it. Of whatever it is. So
Right.
if the standard offer goes up, then we make more revenue, but it's 20% from whatever the standard offer rate is.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody called me tomorrow and said, sign this piece of paper and your electric bill goes down 20%, it doesn't cost you anything, it's pretty much a no-brainer.
Yes, yep. So, so yes, that $52,500 fee is a one-time upfront fee to get that project filled. And you do not have to use this service provider. They are there if you need them. But my recommendation would be, and we can provide some assistance to help you do this, you engage in a community engagement initiative and invite your townspeople to participate in this project. And there would be money in this budget for you to do that. So that's budgeted into this pro forma, into this project. And then ongoing revenue management and churn coverage. So your point is a good one, Derek. What if you have subscribers who leave the project? Well, this fee, which is 1.29 cents per kilowatt hour, that covers revenue management. So Ampion is going to work directly with CMP to get a report on the production from the project. And then they're going to maintain all of the subscribers to that project and how much of a percentage of production each subscriber is allocated. And they will bill those subscribers at 20% off the standard offer rate for those solar credits. And then, so Town of Castine does not have to engage in that at all. You would just get a check monthly from Ampion for that work, along with all the reporting of the production from the project and all of the off-takers and how many kilowatt hours they're each getting. And that includes 10% churn coverage. So if you lose subscribers, Ampion will replace those subscribers as part of this fee, provided you don't lose more than 10% of your subscribers in any given month. And that would only happen if you, let's say, signed up, an affordable housing provider who had 50 meters here in town, and they signed up all of their meters, and then they decided that they were going to participate in a different project, and they pulled out of your project. Well, Ampion would charge you a acquisition fee to get those subscribers back up to 90% of your project capacity, but that is not going to happen. Right,
In your experience, when you have these community projects, I mean, I can't imagine a reason why, if somebody's saving 20% on their electric bill, so if somebody has a $200 a month electric bill, and instead of spending $2,400 a year, they're spending, $2,000, I just can't imagine why somebody would drop out.
Typically happens when someone moves, when someone relocates.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So Ampion, their numbers in Maine, they keep their projects at about 97, 98% full. So they do a very good job, and the key to maintaining your off-takers is to do a good job acquiring them. So explain the program well so they understand it clearly, and they will remain a part of it, unless they move.
And are you open to coming to a public engagement to explain it to people?
Yes, yes,
Part.
I am, absolutely. I'll help you do
Then
that.
all that's.
All right. So Ted, we have certain people out there in the world that don't pay their electric bills. They gotta get the power shut off. If they get their power shut off, would that mean that, this is a very important question. Does that mean that would now be available for somebody else? Or they lose that right to be part of this deal? Or not, like in those cases? Because, now CMP, shut them off in the middle of winter, but then all of a sudden they have a $2,500 electric bill, and you're like, how? How is that possible? But you do have people that do that.
Yeah,
And they get shut off, and so when they get turned back on, sometimes they shop for different suppliers now, ironically, but normally it's CMP that would shut them off. In that case, do you know anything about how that whole process works? Or does
well,
this company?
what I would tell you is that as a select board, one of the decisions that you'll have to make is what will you require in terms of credit worthiness for the subscribers to this project. You wanna, it would be a problem if you had a number of subscribers who would have difficulty getting their bills paid.
Yeah,
And so typically, the developers of these projects have some sort of credit requirement for the participants in these projects.
okay.
And so we can provide you guidance on that.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's okay.
The 50, okay.
Questions are good, right? If you got no questions, then I would worry.
So you said that, in what we initially pay, the amount for us to do a community engagement to bring in subscribers
Mhm.
would be, if that's like $10,000, you said roughly, and that's kind of included in the 2 million. Is the 52,000 also included in the 2 million?
Yeah,
So either way, it's included in the
yes.
2 million.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
thank
so
you.
I've included these costs
Just-
in my pro forma, and I'm gonna show you a cash
So
flow.
the upfront cost is
Statement.
already.
Yep,
Got it,
Yep.
thank you.
yep, you're welcome.
Just making sure we didn't have an extra $52,000 pop up and I have to explain it to taxpayers. Okay.
All right,
that's
and
it.
so you know what Ampion's cost would be on an annual
Yep.
basis. So main community solar, you
Yeah.
should not need them.
But,
Ampion, yes,
Yes.
you would, or a service provider like them. I worked for Ampion for a year and a half. I got their business established up here in Maine. They're the #1 community service, community solar subscriber acquisition and management firm in the state. They have about 71% of the market. That's good because they always have residents to put into projects. So they do a very good job, but there are others and you can certainly put you in touch with them. My recommendation would be Ampion. So this is the cash flow statement. All right, so that's awful hard to see. I'm gonna send this to Derek so that you guys have it.
Send the entire.
Yeah, I'll send all the slides.
That would be.
Yeah, yeah. Let me see here. You guys see my cursor?
Yes, I think so.
All right, so in this column here where my cursor is, that first number is $203,275. So that is your it's labeled excess generation revenue here, but that is that is a combination of this $39,323, which is an avoided cost, plus the $163,955, which is a revenue number.
I got it. Okay, I see
All right.
where you're at. Okay, I see what you're.
And so that combines for $203,275.
Okay,
The other revenue that you would see from this project are through the sale of your renewable energy certificates. So anytime you build a renewable energy project, there is a market for renewable energy certificates. There's state markets, and so you would earn RECs that you could then sell on the market. And so we use a pretty conservative number to value those. But you know, year one, your revenue through RECs would be almost $18,000. So $17,961.
The process of selling those RECs as you describe it, is that something that Ampion
Yeah, we,
helps?
no, actually, we would help you do
You
that.
do that.
Yep,
Okay.
we would do that. And so your total revenue or savings would be $221,236. This, so if you see, there's a column called, you can probably see my screen better, operations and maintenance, O&M.
okay.
So that's also factored into this pro forma. So in year one, you know, we build the project, we're not gonna come back until, you know, after the first year. So in year one, that O&M charge reflects the Ampion subscriber billing and management charge. So $13,769. In year two, that is that Ampion charge combined with Select Energy's operations and maintenance service. So we would operate and maintain this project for you. We would send a technician up on an annual basis to check all the connections, do all the calibration of everything, make sure everything's running well. We're monitoring this project remotely to make sure that it's producing as it should, so we can communicate with every inverter on this project to make sure that every panel is producing as it should. So that is all included in this pro forma. We would take care of the operations and maintenance. Then your debt service, so the next column is debt service is your other cost. That's $140,000 based on a municipal bond bank loan at 3.5% for 25 years. Your total costs would be $154,255. That's the $13,000 for the ambient charge plus the debt service. And so that column all the way.
I was gonna say, what is that cumulative? I don't know what that is. It's like adding everything across for some reason.
All right, so your net cash flow, 66 in year one, $66,981. That is your total savings and revenue of $221,236 minus your total costs of $154,255 equals $66,981. So that's your year one net cash flow. Your cumulative cash flow, remember we talked about that direct pay grant?
Yeah.
$694,000.
Ah, that's where.
So that's already included, so we start off with $694,000 from the direct pay grant. And then we add $66,981 to it, so our cumulative in year one, oops. It's gonna be $761,608. And then in year two, we go down a little bit because we have a bigger O&M cost, because now we've got a maintenance charge in year two. And so the net cash flow for year two is $55,000, cumulative is $816, and then we continue to go up as the cost of electricity goes up. So our production is going to get a little bit lower by 0.5% each year, but electricity costs escalate. We use an escalator that equals the rate of inflation, which is 2.5%. So that's what we factor as the increase of electricity costs and electricity rates.
What was the other programs?
Can you talk about insurance? So you've got this $2.5 million investment. Do we buy a special insurance policy? How much does that cost? I mean, assuming that there was a massive storm and it was destroyed, what do you do?
Yeah, so yeah, you would have insurance on this project, and I think I've got that included. You just bear with me while I confirm that.
I know I look like we're frozen. Oh, I know one. Is I have it paused so I could save the spreadsheet on my screen, that's why. I was like, wait.
Yeah, so we do have a rate, insurance expense of $6,946. That's included as part of that O&M cost.
Okay, great. Okay, that feels good.
So I was asking the other revenue programs, the 17,000 and whatever, I know you gotta get back to it now, but, what were those from? And that one goes down over the years also.
Those are the renewable energy certificates, renewable energy credits.
Okay, all right, okay, yeah, thanks.
All right.
Well, this was super interesting. Thank you so much.
No, he's not done yet.
He is not
Oh,
done
it's not
yet.
done. Oh, okay, sorry. I'm looking at it on my phone. I'm watching you on my phone, so it's hard for me to tell.
No,
All right, so that's that.
we were just looking at some things here. Okay.
Okay.
So this really, it covers just about every cost that you would see. I mean, I've accounted for the cost that you would incur. And yeah, I mean, you've got a net positive cash flow that's pretty substantial right from year one. And over the life of the project, it's a pretty good revenue generator for the town. If you would look at, so if an average household with 6,000 kilowatt hours of electricity use annually, they're probably spending a little over, maybe right around $200 a month on their electricity. They're going to be saving about $281 per year. So if you've got $281 times 145 participants over 25 years, and this is not including the annual increase of electricity prices, you'd be driving about $1 million worth of savings to the residents that participate in the project. So this is, these types of projects only start, like the net energy billing program only facilitated projects that could involve more than 10 participants in 2019, and that's what triggered all the development of all of these community solar projects that are owned by developers like the company I work for, although we're not a community solar developer, we're more of a commercial and industrial developer. But the program is set up, like everything exists, from the services that you would need to how the program is set up, everything exists to be able to pull a project like this off. Now, there are some bills that are being presented in Augusta to impact. Some of them would result in the net energy billing program going away. So those particular bills are very extreme bills. They're not expected to be considered seriously, but there's about 5 total bills impacting or that could impact net energy billing. And so how those bills could potentially impact a project like this, we just don't know until they get through committee. There's a hearing on Thursday, and ultimately, get voted on by the full assembly. But right now, as the program is structured, you can do a project like this. Typically, if they make changes, they will grandfather anything in that has received an approved interconnection application from CMP. Sometimes they'll leave, if you get your interconnection application into CMP, that would be considered grandfathered into the previous version of the program, if there's a new version of the program that results from the work of the legislature.
And what about the direct pay grant? Are we assured that those grant monies are going to be that?
When it comes to incentives, or tax credits, the atmosphere doesn't allow, if anyone says, yeah, you can be assured that that's gonna happen, you can't be assured of it. The feeling is that the Trump administration will not be taking away the 30% investment tax credit or the direct pay, elective pay program, which makes that tax credit essentially available for non-tax paying entities, municipal entities. So there are some things that we're anticipating losing. We are not anticipating losing those, but
We can't be sure.
we can't be sure. Another thing that I have not incorporated into this pro forma, just because it's not practical at this time to do it, is there is a program called the Solar for All program. So this is one of the EPA's Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund programs. This is under the previous administration. The state of Maine was awarded a grant of $62 million under this Solar for All program. The governor's energy office is in the process of determining how they're going to allocate those funds. That will be a grant program, so it's not a financing program. Projects like this would certainly qualify for Solar for All support if probably at least half of the participants in the project, the residential off-takers, were low income homeowners. And I think 60% of the population of the state of Maine is considered low income. So, it probably wouldn't be difficult to.
Do you know if those $62 million, has Maine received those funds, or is that tied up in Congress and not yet dispersed to the state?
The funds are not in the hands of the governor's energy office. Yeah,
Not
so,
again,
the whole rush at the end of last year was to get this funding far enough through the, their life cycle or the process. And, with Trump's executive orders, a lot of this funding has been frozen, and it's gonna require court litigation and lawsuits to free it up. And so there's the potential that the project could benefit more from Solar for All, and we'll do everything that we would do everything we can that we do to try to claim some of those dollars once we know how the program is going to work. But we don't know for sure. Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
What about the interconnection with CMP? Are they automatically going to grant it, or is there a question there? I mean, are they gonna start limiting how much solar comes on their grid?
So any project, you have to present an interconnection application to CMP. You have to have your site design, provide that to them. And then they will study the circuit, they will study the impact of that project on the grid circuit, on the circuits locally, and determine, first of all, if the project can be tied into the grid. If it can, will there be infrastructure upgrades that are required beyond running a pole line into the site, adding a transformer? Those costs are factored into this project. So CMP is ultimately going to be the one who decides if the project can be connected and what upgrades will be required to connect the project. Right now, we know that there is capacity on the circuit where this project would be located to send that electricity out to the grid. So there is enough PV hosting capacity in this local circuit to do it. But CMP has to study the project, understand its implications and its impact, and then either issue an approval of the application or issue a disapproval of the application with typically notes on what would be required for that project to reach approved application.
When you said that, I think you said 18% of the project's production would go to town meters, did you include the water treatment plant?
I didn't, because that is a medium general service meter. And the value of each kilowatt hour that we would assign to that meter would only be 11 cents. And so financially, it would be better if you had residential off-takers paying you 18 cents, claiming those solar credits versus the treatment plant at 11 cents.
Are there other big town uses that you also exclude, or is that the only one?
So I got you're talking meters that the town of Castine
Right,
pays?
right.
Yep, so 15 small general service meters and the one medium general service meter at the treatment plant is what I receive for the town's load.
Does that include the school, the school?
No, I don't think we did the school, so the school could potentially be on there if they're small.
Yeah.
We could look at all those other.
How many classrooms, how many students go to that school?
46.
46.
It's not a huge
It's
school.
big as a class.
Still gotta keep the lights on.
I know, but we use a lot of electricity.
They,
But
yeah,
I don't know if they're gonna be
Most-
a medium though, that's the thing.
most schools are medium general
Oh,
service
okay.
meters, so it'd be the same scenario, but it could be a small general service meter.
I mean, it makes sense to look at it all, but I think that's.
Yeah, and we can do that
Yeah,
at any time, even after the project turns on, you can reallocate, which meters, you can add new meters, pull meters out.
I'm actually surprised. the
Simon,
fire
what about the
Yeah.
library? Is that, or they've already,
I think the
They're
library
on
was in
something,
there.
yeah, I don't
Library.
I think the
recall.
library was in that group.
Mark, did you have a question?
Yeah, well, they're 82% going to Res A.
Yeah.
Can you tell me is there a Res B or a Res C?
No, so the CMP has meter rate classifications, and so for residential meters, they're identified as Resi A,
So
just like,
the two other parts of that question are,
yeah,
we have, I don't know how many nonprofits, including 4 churches, Historical Society, Wilson Museum, etc. Can they get into this program?
sure. Yeah,
And they'd be considered to be Res A's?
they might have small general service meters.
I know,
They could
I
have-
know the Historical Society absolutely is small. General
Yeah.
service.
Yeah, so you just have to, so yes, I mean, you can involve any meter rate classification in the project.
What about commercial users? We have maybe a dozen businesses in town.
You could, but the revenue that the town is going to see for each kilowatt hour that they allocate to those meters is going to be significantly less than they would see if those credits went to a residential meter.
Okay,
Because of the difference of how CMP bills.
so it's just,
No, that's a
it's gonna
good-
be a benefit.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
For churches, it's the same thing, it's a smaller revenue?
So my guess is a church probably has a small general service
Yeah.
meter.
Oh, yeah.
And so the value of each kilowatt hour to the town would be,
So it was like 20 cents instead of 23,
Okay.
yeah, so if we go back
and
here,
you're telling them they're gonna pay 80% of that, so, yeah. They,
yeah. So instead of a 20% discount rate off of 23.416 cents, it's gonna be a 20% discount off of 20.468 cents. Yeah, yeah. So you just wanna, if you end up collecting a lot of SPS meters to participate in the project, it's just going to impact your bottom line, your net cash flow. But it's certainly a nice benefit to extend to your businesses in town as well.
Ted, I have one more question.
Yeah, Mark.
As the town or you or an entity markets this to the residents, the 145 more or less, potential clients. Is your experience that customers be more receptive to seeing something from the town, being offered by the town, as opposed to being offered by a commercial interest? In other words, if I get something in the mail, so you can save 20%, it goes into the rotary file immediately. Because I just assume, I don't wanna know,
Yeah.
I can't deal with it.
Yeah.
But if the town of Castine says, taxpayers, we're gonna, here's a program for us to each save 20% off our meter, is that a more effective marketing concept than spending the whatever, it's $50,000 or whatever?
Well, Mark, I would tell you that I would be more excited about marketing that project than I would marketing a developer-owned project
That's what,
where the revenue, the earnings, the profits of the project go to a developer and their institutional investors. So,
something for
they're,
the town leaders to consider, we're in it, not. We're subject to a.
right, so they're paying the town for their solar credits
Right,
instead of paying Constellation Energy, a retail energy supplier, or New Brunswick Power. I mean, they don't supply energy down here, but
What I hear you saying, I'm sorry, what I hear you saying is that when I'm sorry, I forgot who they are, the people who send out that letter.
Yeah.
If we go with them, when they send it out, they're going to spell out that this is a Castine owned project. And if you sign up, you will be helping the town, or you will be part of this community
Right.
solar project, you would be.
yeah, they would do that. So what those guys would probably do is they would probably send a small team, maybe 2 or 3 canvassers. And they would have those canvassers spend, a week, 2 weeks maybe, in the town of Castine. Knocking on doors and signing up Castine residents. I would only do that after putting, a really good effort into trying to get the subscribers without having to pay Maine Community Solar
Yeah,
to
I
do that.
agree, yeah, I agree.
But yeah, if you did have to pay them to do that, that's probably what they would do, because, if I were one of you, I would definitely want as much as possible for this project to benefit residents of the town of Castine. And so it should be, plan B to go outside of the town of Castine to get off to it.
Can I ask you a question, because it's a couple of things, I got one, end of life, but the other one is, okay, the
end of life.
end of life, like
Of the
the end of
project.
life, getting rid of these. Everybody that's against solar always talks, when they're all done, they gotta be landfilled and they're toxic waste, so.
We're already
like,
in the landfill.
on the disposal, right, you don't have to bring it too far, but my point is, there's gotta be a cost associated with end of life of disposal of the. Things in 35 years or whatever it is, and what is the cost of something like that? That's something that I'd worry about, number one. Number two, while we're just on it, so on the bills, I was just looking at some net energy billing, cause I've seen bills that are, and I haven't seen my own, because I don't pay that bill. And we have solar something that we bought into or something.
Yeah.
But I know that on my Eversource bill for the fire department in Allenstown, we used to get these negative rates off the regular Eversource bill because of the power that we were, you know, getting into it. But so, but I think we still had a distribution fee or something on it from Eversource. So in this case, when you talk about the 23 cents, that includes the transmission distribution, right? That power is still going out over CMP's power lines, right? You're telling me they don't get a penny from this power because of the net billing and the energy credits and all that? I mean, that, to me, that, I can see why they don't really like it if that's the case, because they have, you know, maintenance costs, the power goes out and everything else, then, where are they getting their money? For, except for non-net billing, power sales.
So part of the reality of this program is that when there are participants in these community solar projects, that does impact the revenue of the utility. As we electrify, as we install heat pumps, as that becomes more prevalent, as we get more EVs, our load is increasing at a much faster rate than the generation from these solar projects are coming online.
Yeah.
And so whatever the utilities are potentially losing in T&D costs, they're making back up with an increase in electrification. Plus they are, you know, they're, as a regulated utility, they're guaranteed a certain profit margin by the state, and so, you know, that's what they work towards. But this project on your landfill is gonna generate 1 million kilowatt hours of electricity. Yes, it gets pushed out to the grid, but you're really using that electricity on this side of the distribution station, so you're really using that electricity within this load zone here of Castine. So we don't really need CMP's transmission lines to send that electricity to the other side of the district
or someplace else.
So I mean, you're really, with a project like that, you're kind of charging the grid locally, and you're using the transmission and distribution.
So this never,
Network,
this never comes in on the major power lines across Knobscot, because it's already, it's just in the wires here and then whatever, okay.
That's right.
Where was your end of life question?
The end of life, well, that's the next question is, okay, we have to dispose of this when it's done. I'm guessing we should be saving up some of these profits, so to speak, into a reserve account for removing this one day.
Yeah.
And what do those costs look like? Cause I think they affect the spreadsheet in the end, because we need to put money away for that. And what happens, well, I guess if we are insured, a big hailstorm destroys a bunch of the panels, then insurance would help pay for those costs. But, and of course, the durability and stuff like that. I don't know what the winters were, well, I brought snow this winter for the first time apparently here to the peninsula in years, right? Yeah, they tell me it's the snowiest winter ever. I come in and all of a sudden, boom, they're getting snow and it's my fault, right? But no, sleet, hail, stuff like that, and damaging these things too. I mean, I don't know on these insurance policies if they have like act of God type of, you know, force majeure language, something like that. So those are a couple of little details that I can see that are gonna come up from people in the public.
Yeah, so we'll be able to show you what an insurance policy for a project like this, you know, looks like. But you know, weather events, that insurance policy would cover any losses due to weather events. The decommissioning of the project, you know, we can't really forecast what labor rates are gonna be in 25 years. If we were to give a number, we would probably offer a number. If we were to do the decommissioning, we were to send our technicians and, you know, they assemble projects. We need their expertise to assemble the projects. You don't need as much expertise to take a project apart. But we would use a fee of probably 30 cents per watt. So we've got 899,000 watts here. Wait, right. Yeah, so decommissioning, it would be labor. If we were to do it, today's dollars, be about a $30,000 charge.
30,000, get rid of that whole thing.
Yeah,
That's not bad. I expected it to be a lot more.
Just bury it.
But also, I think, I mean, I assume that technology will change in 25 years and but I would think that we will still want the electricity and so we would not decommission it completely. We would maybe replace the panels with new, better panels.
Right.
The electronics would definitely
Yeah.
be replaced.
yeah,
But hopefully the ballast and the stands, those would last even longer than the panels.
yeah, I mean, you should still be getting very good production out of your panels, even after 30 years. The inverters, they'll need to be replaced somewhere around year 12 or year 13. That's factored into the pro forma. We usually factor that change out of the inverters in year 11. And then we have that again factored in year 21. So those would have to be replaced, but those panels should continue to produce, quite well, even past 30 years. So, and then if you just Google, today, if you Google solar panel recycling, there's a whole ecosystem of companies out there that recycle solar panels, they refurbish solar panels and sell them on a refurbished goods marketplace. And so like, these panels are not gonna end up in a landfill. You'll be able to find companies who will, in all likelihood, give you a price for those solar panels. They will recycle them or refurbish them and resell them.
Okay.
And so them going in landfills is that doesn't happen.
Oh, I get a million questions, but I'm done for now.
And so, to your knowledge, are municipalities creating accounts where they're putting money aside to eventually replace all of their panels?
I've got to tell you, there are not. You would be the first municipality in Maine that I work with on a project like this.
Okay,
Now, so you would be one of the first.
okay.
How many other municipalities have already done projects like this in
Yeah,
the state?
you can reach
I think the number is quite small.
Yeah.
You would be among the first. And the reason why you would be among the first is because, I don't think most municipalities have gone through the process that you went through to get a firm to, do a study and offer you some input. And then have a person like me come in and talk to you about a project like this. I think that these types of projects at the municipal level, sponsored and owned by the municipality, using the service providers that exist, using the program as it exists, hopefully it continues to exist in that way, is a real way to generate revenue for the town as well as drive benefit to the residents. So I think this is an exciting project. I'd love for it to be set an example that we could use, in other places across the state. Yeah, Mark.
I think another selling point is that the town at some point, I don't know, I wasn't around here, spent a lot of money to cap a landfill.
Yeah,
And they created a resource they probably didn't even consider to be a resource.
right.
When it was done, and now we get the benefit. So that's one reason why probably a lot of towns don't do it, because they need to go out and purchase acreage to do it. And we've got it.
Yeah,
I mean, there are a lot of reasons to put something up there.
yeah,
And plus, it's away from everybody.
yeah.
Right, nobody complains, there's already a landfill in their backyard, so a solar panel on top.
I mean, it's,
is not big of a
John?
deal.
I got a question regarding that. I'm just wondering why, I know we own like 250 acres or something out there. Why did you decide to put it on that hill rather than some other flat area?
Because you can't do anything else on that hill.
Well,
There's nothing else we can do on the top of that hill. so we can't use it for anything else.
Isn't
And,
it?
Pickleball.
and plus, a lot of pickleball, what are?
Not on the hill.
And but the other thing is, a lot of the rest of the land out there is, either, forested or it's wetlands. Like anything back past the filled place, it gets really mucky and it's a wetland, and we don't wanna try to go in there and put, so I don't think in my opinion, it's a good idea to try to put solar in a wetland, but.
No, I'm just thinking that there's like, it seems like when you go back to that burn pile, there's like maybe
It seems-
150 yards of flat space
Yeah.
back there. And you were saying you're constrained by the size. of-
Oh, I see what you're
Hill.
saying, okay.
I don't know.
Oh, well, this takes off, we can do more if it came down to it, I mean, that's the thing.
Yep, it's,
But it's finding the users too, that's the whole
Yeah.
key to the whole thing is finding the users of the
Yeah.
electricity.
I mean, your question is a really good question. You know, one benefit of this site is that you've got three-phase power running at the street. That three-phase power would be even more accessible if the array was located closer to the road versus further away from the road, which is where the landfill is. But when I started working for Ampion in 2021, and I was new to the renewable energy industry, you know, I paid a lot of attention to the sentiments of those who were, if not opposed, maybe somewhat offended by where some of these projects were being cited. And, you know, a lot of people, it didn't matter where they were politically, were offended if a project, and, you know, I use the word offended, you could probably use other words, but they were offended if a project resulted in the clearing of a lot of forest land. And, you know, I can appreciate that. And there were those who were offended if a project consumed a lot of fertile agricultural land. And I can understand that as well. You know, ultimately, I think landowners should have some right to choose what they want to do with their property, but, you know, I agree that those are not the ideal sites for solar projects like this. But to that point, a capped landfill is something that cannot be used for any other purpose, really. And it's a site that is very unlikely to generate opposition or to result in someone being offended. And that's an advantage to a project like this, because you want the community to be on board, you want them to support it, and eliminating folks being offended by where the project is gonna be sited is an important step towards doing that.
It's a good question though, Josh. Maybe we could use more of that space.
I don't know, it seems like building stuff on a hill is another level of difficulty.
If our affordable housing takes off, then you could look at, it, you know,
We may
maybe say,
have to,
okay,
yeah.
we'll do solar as part of that whole deal
Yeah.
too.
Okay,
Yeah.
Well,
You
you
know,
do that on rooftops though, if you're just gonna try to do
That's
that
true.
project,
We could do
it wouldn't
that.
make sense to just do it on the roof, but this is for.
So what, how do you guys feel about this? Like, do you feel that this is something that? I mean, I'm gathering by reactions that this is something that you're willing to
I have
make a
to-
run at.
I have to say, in the beginning, I wasn't so sure.
Yeah.
But you've provided a very compelling case,
Okay, good.
and if we. I feel a lot better if I knew that grant money was secure.
Yeah, that's what I was.
But
Yeah,
that's not the end of the world.
yeah.
I'm still learning quite a bit about this, but to me, it seems like something that's worth considering,
Mhm.
worth, you know. Because I had asked you a question, I think in our last meeting, like, you know, if we're facing decisions as a town as to what we invest in our infrastructure.
Yeah.
You know, this may be 1 or 2 million, we're looking to build a fire department, you know, that could be several $1,000,000.
Yeah.
Like, how do we allocate all of our resources or
Yeah.
our debt service? And so I can pose the question, like, what if we didn't build the infrastructure? You know, are we satisfied with the amount of discounts that we might get from some other solar array that already exists?
Yeah.
if we're not looking at it as a revenue generator, you know, when you take your revenue plus your debt service.
Yeah.
You know, if you're willing to do that, because your net cash flow is gonna be several years, you know, out.
Right.
And so those are the kinds of things I'm grappling with in
Yeah.
terms of trying to prioritize what our infrastructure needs and where we invest those infrastructure dollars
Yes.
right now. And so, but I appreciate all this, because it's helping me have a better understanding of ins and the outs of this project, especially one of this size, where we could make, you know, opportunities for residents here or elsewhere.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I appreciate all your time. It's just
Yeah.
And
lots of
I was gonna say the same, so I was worried, and Ted knows this too, because at first, looking at, okay, saving, I forget what our energy use is in town, but as I often said, well, if we buy a power from somebody else investing in this, we're gonna save 10 or 20% off our bills. Then we're gonna get a lease of, I think the Dana Law said of 15,000.
Yeah.
No,
it's
Ted and I
not-
were going back and forth on that, so that was like 30,000. This proposal talks about, you know, $66,000 a year. And I don't know in your revenue how, because it does talk about electric bill savings in one column. I'm guessing that somehow in the excess generation revenue, but I'm not
Yeah, so your
sure.
revenue is all in that excess
Yeah.
generation revenue.
So even the avoided costs that we're not paying.
Avoided
for those
costs
amounts,
plus revenue,
everything,
it's
okay.
all together there.
So that's in there, but then this is so much more than $15,000. And at first I was like, I'm not going to Karen and Sue and tell them that we're now gonna cover utility. And I had to listen to people complaining about their electric bills every month, they're shutting off the power. I'm like, they will throw me out tomorrow. So now I'm getting more comfortable, at least on the whole thing, you know, of like, wait, okay, this is
No,
actually
it
could work.
does make much more sense.
Right.
If I may, Amy, you brought up a very good
And
point.
savings.
When you talked about the priorities in the town for all the capital expenditures. Well, if you told everybody in town that they were gonna be facing a $281 tax increase next year, you're gonna hear a lot of complaints on the phone. You offset that with $281 of decreased utility costs, and you're at net zero. And I think that's another way to sell it. You know, it helps us offset the revenue that we're going to have to generate as taxpayers.
Yeah, the project is gonna generate revenue for the town.
That's a good point.
And it's
So
not
this
just,
is,
it's not just the taxpayers, it's also the municipal buildings.
But it's also for the town, and if we could talk to our most vulnerable residents, our residents who are on very fixed incomes, and explain that if they sign up for this, they could save $280 a year on this, plus the town would be making revenue that we can spend on other infrastructure projects.
And hold their tax burden down.
And yeah, and it might not hold their tax burden down, but it would
Would prevent it from going up.
alleviate their tax
That's-
burden, right? Or it would even it out
I
at the
think
very,
it's part of the sales process.
yeah.
Yeah, I hear a lot of, you know, well, we're not in the business of, we're not in the energy business, or, you know, electricity is a utility, like sewerage, like water, and you're now in a position where you can generate it. And there's a mechanism for you to see revenue through selling those credits.
By the way, we are in the water business and we are in the sewage business.
Right?
We're already,
Exactly,
we're
right?
already in the
A
business.
lot of times they're in those businesses, nobody else wants to be in those businesses, you know?
Yeah, but we're in them. It's just one
So-
more.
Trash business.
Let me share with you what I would like to kind of lay out in terms of timeline, next steps. So the next thing that I need to do internally, and you know, I want you guys to tell me, Ted, we'd like you to do this, you know, we're serious enough to say that should be done. But I would have an internal review. We're not a big company, we're about 115 people, we're owned by a much larger company. But we have what we call, for ground mount projects like this, we have an internal review which involves our top executives, our CEO, or CFO, and we review these project details. Before that, we send our technical site assessor. So this is a guy who's been doing ground mount projects for 20 years. He's been with the company for 9 years. He's gonna come to the site and do a very technical site analysis to make sure that we can get, 600 kilowatt AC project on the flat part of that landfill. He'll assess other areas of that site to see if there might be a spot or a better spot for more panels. So that would be part of his assessment. But he would come up from Massachusetts, he'd perform that site assessment, and then we'd have our internal review to do our final costing to make sure that we've considered everything that we need to consider in terms of infrastructure upgrades, infrastructure costs, the length of pole line. And then we would issue you a letter of intent, because you're a member of Power Options. Typically, when we submit an application, an interconnection application to CMP, there's typically a $2,500 fee associated with that. And then if they come back and say your level 2 application failed, you're gonna need to submit a level 4 application, which just means that there's more infrastructure required of the project. So then we have to pay another fee. So typically in our letters of intent, we will have a clause in there that if the customer decides, after we do the due diligence, they decide that they don't want to move forward with the project, then we would request reimbursement of those costs associated with that interconnection application. But because you're a member of Power Options or Main Power Options, our letter of intent contract or letter of intent template does not require that reimbursement. So there's no risk for you guys signing that letter of intent. That gives us the ability to initiate the interconnection application process. We need that letter to verify to CMP that we have authorization to submit that interconnection application on behalf of the town of Castine. And then that's a good faith document that we use internally to do our due diligence and to begin the development process. It's not until we get a response back from CMP and we know what our interconnection costs are going to be, that we then prepare a contract and then present a contract to you, which would be bonding.
And how long does it typically take to get that verification from CMP?
6 to 9 months. If we can get it in as a level 2 application, it could go faster, but I'm guessing this is probably gonna be a level 4 application. So, if I had Ken LaCourse is our site assessment guy. If I had him come up at the end of March, he performed a site assessment. We followed that up quickly with an internal meeting to discuss the project. We issued a letter of intent in April. We'd have our interconnection application submitted to CMP in June. We'd be looking at, if all goes well, a 6 to 9 month process that CMP would undertake to approve our application. And then, this could be a project that if all goes well, we could probably complete Q2 or Q3 of 2026. The big return item right now are transformers, so we're gonna need a new transformer at that site. And transformers, there's so much going on right now with electrical infrastructure across the United States. We're upgrading, we're transforming our grid, we're modernizing our grid. There's a year-long, 1 to 3 years is what it would take to get a transformer, depending on the size. And so that is one lead time item that could extend the project timeline out. But otherwise, we think there's a reasonable chance that, this project could be up, complete and built and generating power by the end of next year.
So, not to be negative, no. But let's say CMP says, great, you can go for it, get that in 9 months, we get it in November.
Yeah.
Say, whatever. And Augusta has turned on us and said there will be no more net energy building.
Yeah.
If we at that point say, gosh, Ted, we really love to, but this is
Well,
gonna help our people.
Yeah.
We are under no obligation to continue at that point.
Not until we put a contract in front of you and
And
we
we
sign a
sign that
contract.
contract.
Yeah,
Okay,
but we won't do that until we know what the interconnection costs will be.
right,
And by then, the legislature, we're gonna be beyond June.
yeah, we're gonna
So
be
the
done.
legislature will have voted on these bills, and I'm gonna be providing testimony on Thursday at the
Good.
hearing.
Good.
And I'm gonna be keeping tabs. I was just on a conference call with Maine Renewable Energy Association as I was driving here. You know, I'll know what is gonna be passed in terms of bills affecting NEB, if any of them are passed, and exactly what impact they have, if they would have an impact on this project. I'll let you know immediately what that impact will be.
And we can't be there Thursday, but we did send testimony.
Oh, good, good. All right,
Saying,
awesome.
we
Wonderful.
want to do this, or we
Yeah.
think we want to do this, and. please don't.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't name the municipality, but this is a project that, hey, I'm working with the municipality and this is Hancock County.
Yeah.
In Hancock County, and you know, their project is gonna drive this much revenue to the town over 25 years. It's gonna result in this much savings for their residents, and that's important for that community to know and understand.
What state representatives, senators have any awareness of this? And because, you know, they should help us lobby if they're any, you know, what's her name, Brahowski?
Oh, she's very aware, she's
I was
on the
gonna say,
energy and
she's-
utility committee, she's
She's
very
good.
She's
aware.
aware of what the town is considering?
Oh, no,
I
but she's
know.
very aware about
No,
that.
no, I'm talking
energy
about
bill.
this.
We could send Nicole an email and let her know what we're considering, right?
I would,
I'm sure she's.
I would love to see, you know, if this is something that we think we might wanna pursue, I'd love to see like a community forum.
Yeah.
You know, where you come to speak and kind of explain things to the townspeople.
Yeah.
You know, before perhaps a letter of intent, and certainly before a contract, the idea of, this is what we're thinking, to make sure that the residents have the opportunity to hear the information from you, you know, as a subject matter expert, and not necessarily just from us.
No, that's great.
And, because I'd love to also hear their feedback. And,
Yep.
you know, we have these work sessions, but we've got hundreds of people who live in this little village, who I
Yeah.
think I'd like to give them an opportunity to, speak up.
So
Yep.
we have a listening session on Thursday. That
Which,
is,
that includes
that
solar,
that
right?
does include,
I don't think that does that.
but Ted, we didn't talk, we didn't. talk.
Yeah,
I don't think it is,
I
it's
think
7
that's something like
o'clock
what we did
though.
with GEI, you know, like
Okay,
a
that's
month ago,
just
that some
so-
things just down and kind of structured
So
upstairs.
can we get some availability from you for what would you be able to come and do an evening meeting with our entire community?
Yeah, absolutely.
Give them this
Yeah, I'd be very happy to do that.
That's kind of what
Sure.
I
I like
envisioned in my mind.
So
just
this
to-
week, we're just gonna do the round school, that'd be great. So. Should we do that? We should do that.
Well,
sooner
here's the
than
thing,
later.
if we're gonna start looking at this, I think we need to have a warrant article to look at even the authorization to borrow the money for this project. Whether it's a bond bank, whether it's CEI, cause I don't know what their money is coming with, that they're supposed to be getting, right?
And that's all up in the air because that was.
Right, that's
EPA
part of
greenhouse
the-
gas reduction
right.
funding, yeah.
Right, so, but,
Yeah.
and I don't know what that article
So
looks
the-
like, but appropriate, so a bond, so it'd be good to have an information session like that for questions and answers. And because then a lot of us will have the answers for town meeting when we discuss like, okay, we're gonna have an article to actually borrow the money for this, cause I
Yeah.
would just soon have it at the regular town meeting where you have, which is crazy to me to see 120 people, cause I'm usually used to seeing 50 or 10 or
Oh,
20.
You'll see more,
Right,
you'll see about
right.
100 people.
Right, I know, well, I went last year, it's like, wow, look,
yeah,
this is
right.
like a huge town meeting.
So,
So, yeah, but then like you'll have those answers, and because you're gonna have even people that
So
are
we-
snowbirds that
yeah,
they're gonna have these questions, and I learn a little bit every time Ted talks to us.
I do too, I
Yeah.
remember more. every time.
Right.
But so, do you think we need to have this public
I-
session soon?
I think
Sooner
that,
because we need to write a warrant.
I think you do, I think that there are people out there that still have some questions, and I think that the sooner that we can do it, the better. Hopefully we'll get
So,
people, and we'll do an online version like the public forum.
yeah.
So
Ted,
that,
Like we did for GEI.
right, so that I can, I'll set it up.
we can't do Wednesdays, right? So,
I kind of need to.
So I'm happy to do that anytime, and I'm happy to do it multiple times if that's
well, I'd like,
what it would take. The only benefit that you would have doing it prior to signing the contract. Because if you sign the contract, it's gotta be knowing where you're gonna get the financing, right? So you're gonna need town approval if you're gonna go to municipal bonding. Uh, we'll have a better understanding, a firm understanding of all of our costs after Ken comes to do his site assessment. I mean, I think that I'm pretty
Okay,
close to where we are. But after Ken comes to do a site assessment, we review it internally, do our site plan and then submit that to CMP. We'll get some early feedback from CMP as to how they feel about the ability of that project to be interconnected. What I would at least want you guys to consider is that if we do it, if that's the next step in the process, there's a chance that we could have that public meeting, have that public forum. But we could find out 6, 8, 10 weeks from now that the cost to interconnect the project is gonna be too expensive, or for whatever reason, we're not gonna get an approved interconnection application. So the benefit of
waiting.
waiting is that we know exactly what the costs are, and we've received some feedback from CMP, so according to CMP, this project should be doable. We should be able to do this project,
So, okay.
but I'm happy to do it.
Okay, no,
at any
it's
time.
okay, so a work session, we cannot make a decision at a work session, we can only make a decision at a meeting.
Yeah.
Which would be next week, Monday, so.
Yeah.
We could make a decision to sign the letter of intent or not at the next meeting, next Monday. And then that would bring him, your engineer here to do the.
Actually, I'll have Ken come before we present the letter of intent to you.
Right, I thought his
Yeah.
site visit was before the letter of
Before the
intent.
letter.
Yeah, it is.
Oh.
So I'm gonna schedule a meeting with Ken to go over the project.
Okay.
Derek has already provided me with the post closing permit. So Ken will review that. I'd like for the snow to be melted, I think, before he comes back up, before he comes up to
Okay,
walk the
so,
site.
so you're saying we've got some time here because Ken will come and then after Ken comes, we'll look at the letter of intent. Is that's what you're telling us?
I'm saying that it would be good to have Ken come take a look at the site.
Okay.
Get our preliminary site plan made up and sent to CMP, get some early feedback from CMP. I think before inviting the community to come in
Yeah.
and say, hey, we're doing this, we're
Thinking about
thinking
it.
about doing this
Yeah.
project. Because I hate to do that, only
Yeah.
find out that we can't do the project because there's some infrastructure
that-
problem that CMP has identified that
Brilliant.
either makes it it's cost prohibitive or just can't be done. I think the chances of that are very, very low, but you don't wanna have to go back to all your townspeople and say, hey, they see you, hey, what's that project, what's that solar project coming in, oh, sorry.
Better safe, okay,
Yeah.
now, but to your point.
Well, so maybe we gotta wait on the finance.
If we need a warrant.
Right.
Maybe.
Maybe we
will
gotta
have to
wait,
have a
because
special
maybe we
town
can, maybe it's not 650, maybe that there is more land out there to up the
Right.
size a little bit more. I don't,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure. You looked at the layout contours of that when you decided how many panels could fit up there safely,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because Josh was talking, we're limited to 1 megawatt anyways under net metering, so.
Yeah.
So there's no.
We're 3/4 of the way, so
Yeah.
so there may be flat land in some of the corners, but,
Yeah,
that's a
and-
challenge, though.
We looked at if we moved, we did look initially at if we moved the brush pile to
A different
south,
spot.
to another side, and then we
Oh.
reconfigured where the wood bank does their thing, could we
Yeah.
get some of that
Yeah,
area?
I mean, to Josh's point, it doesn't have to be on top of the landfill.
Yeah.
If there's a better piece of ground that can hold as many panels or maybe even a few more, and we don't have to, balance those panels in the racking to the top of the landfill, then it's perfectly logical to go that route.
But the landfill is like perfect unused.
Right, exactly, yeah.
And that whole process, especially
Yeah,
like with
I
the
like
6
this.
to 9 months, I mean, it might ultimately put this in our next fiscal year. but-
Right, right.
Yeah, so if we go according to this timeline.
Thank you, Barbara.
So if we submit an interconnection application in June, let's say things go well, we get a response, an approved application by the end of the year. Then we wanna start having those meetings, involve the town, make sure they understand exactly what's going on. I think in the spring, so the Maine Municipal Bond Bank, if they end up being the route we take for financing, they have a spring and a fall sale. And usually I think it's April and October. And so you still, I think, have plenty of time to submit your application to the Maine Municipal Bond Bank for financing and be part of their April 2026 sale. And then the funding, I think, becomes available very soon thereafter.
Could you do us a favor, like you're gonna send these slides to Derek, I think, so he can
Yeah.
share them with us? Could you add one more slide that represents that kind of timeline? Where, so that, because we're
Okay.
managing like the fire department
Yep.
proposal timeline and this, and I wanna make sure that we have something that we can reference that talks about, you know, your colleague's site visits, wanting snow to melt, and getting that information you want from CMP, and then bringing the community forum together to say, hey, let's talk about this project, let us explain it, and then,
That's great.
and then where the financing timeline comes in, and that way, because I know I'm gonna lose track of it.
Yep.
And, I've never built a solar array before, so. I know, right? I just turn a light on.
This is-
This
This is great, thank you.
So anyway, something
Yes,
that would be,
absolutely.
I'm very,
Yes.
that would be really helpful.
And actually,
Give us your thoughts on that.
I really appreciate, for some reason, I was feeling like you really needed that letter of intent soon, and so I'm really glad that we're slowing it down, and we're taking our time and doing all our due diligence.
Yeah, I definitely want to get Ken up here first. Then we need to do that before we review it internally. And then when we submit that letter of intent, you know, we know what we're talking about. We had one of our technical people assess the site and so, yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you so.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Access.
Yes,
Make one
yes, Mark.
other comment. I always have something else to say, I'm sorry. I think that this project would warrant a special town meeting. Because I think the regular town meeting, a lot of it's just pro forma. You know, we just go through, you know. this
Yeah.
goes- And I think that this is
That's a good
going to
idea.
warrant enough discussion and enough input. The last question I have for you, Ted.
Yeah, Mike.
Does the CMP have any awareness of what this town, about this project? Do they have anybody at any level that's been approached there? Like, hey, would you guys consider this?
No, that won't that doesn't happen until
You can't even do it in
submission. We can do a pre-screening
Yeah,
and
what about lobbying? You know, do you guys lobby them? Or maybe that makes no sense.
well, I'll tell you what CMP specific, the utilities, it's a burden.
Yes.
I don't know if they don't like having to do all of the back end
Oh, no.
stuff to accommodate the billing. And so, and they also don't necessarily like being dictated to in terms of how they're going to upgrade and modernize the grid. And that's kind of happened through this program, but that's okay. They're supposed to take what the PUC and the legislature and the citizens of Maine tell them they want done. CMP has, in the last couple of years, they've become more, I guess cooperative is the word I would use when it comes to getting these projects connected and online. But there's a lot of politics involved with this program. Obviously, there's 5 bills associated with that energy billing. But you guys have a good site. The size of your town, I think, would make it practical and achievable to engage the community and get their buy-in, get their support, and I can help you do that. I can help you do that at a meeting.
No, that's great, because we have enough, I think we have enough residents who either wouldn't be able to afford or wouldn't want to put solar panels on their homes. But that could do well with this, with
Yeah.
20% savings, it would be very helpful for them. Without them making that huge investment.
Yes, and that's what,
I think that's a great idea.
that's the benefit of community solar. It gives those who can't afford or don't have a suitable roof to do their own solar project an opportunity to be part of solar and benefit from solar. And so that's the whole purpose the concept of community solar. And I believe that this is the ideal way to apply it. Versus having a developer build it, and they make a lot of money off these projects. A lot of developers found sites, they invested in getting those sites developed, but they ultimately had to kill the projects for whatever reason. Maybe they were too expensive to develop. So there have been a lot of developers that have lost money trying to develop projects. Those who developed them early and selected good sites and got their projects built, they're gonna do very well with these projects. But it's something that a municipality can do, and they can generate revenue, and they can drive direct benefit to their townspeople. So I like this project and ones I used to work on when I was selling.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for all your time.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
And Mark, to your comment about the special town meeting, we've had to check with Karen, I think, because I think there are only certain kinds of funds that can be approved at town meeting. I don't.
We
think
can do a
taxation
bond
is-
question. Well,
Can you do
here's,
taxation?
well, yeah, because the payment won't be due till a future year.
Oh, okay,
So the bond could happen, because it wouldn't
at a
be,
special town meeting,
yeah.
okay.
I was only considering the optics and the kind of
The
conversation.
conversation.
So there are
timeline.
6 of us here, taking a couple of hours to
Right.
deal with it. You can imagine.
It's gonna be a lot.
Right.
Yeah,
200
And it's an
people,
important decision, so
very important.
need
decision.
everybody's.
The last thing I would suggest is that when you make presentations to the public, these fractions of pennies and these 899,000.
Skip them.
Just say 900,000, 2 cents, you know, I mean, just give people the bottom line. I know, but
Maybe I'll do that for everybody, every audience.
but it's like,
Those 1,000s of pennies add up, Mark. They add up to sometimes a whole penny.
Hey,
that's the point.
There's
Which-
gonna be a penny pretty
Which
soon.
we're no longer
Mark,
missing.
Thank you, Ted, so much.
Yeah, you're very
I
welcome.
really appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Thank you for your
Is
time.
there anything of importance that I should consider on?
So Derek, I'll email that slide presentation.
I don't know what else, I didn't know there was anything else.
Sounds great, thank you. Oh, by the way, that's what I
Yeah,
missed when
right.
I was doing that thing was the
It's not on my birthday.
$600,000 grant off that
May 10th.
financing.
Okay, yeah.
Because I
Really?
actually would like to pay for this as quick as
It was my
possible.
mother's
So
birthday.
it's all gravy
Mine
rather
and my
than,
son.
Yeah.
stretching it over 25
generations.
years. So,
That's
but still, it just helps things out on the
Okay.
interest side of things.
Yeah, and there should be, the municipal bonding should not be the only financing
Right.
option for you guys. But there are programs that
Yeah, it's 6 AM.
Okay, no, we're gonna get
you
you.
just
out
need
there.
more time to.
Right.
work,
Yeah.
Settle out what's happening in Washington.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm hoping to marry some other
Okay,
things
so-
into it, some other
I'm gonna sit here
grants
for a few more
too.
minutes.
So,
Thanks, Mark.
on the passport, do we wanna sit down and debrief before we talk about that?
Yeah, we got
Okay.
time on that one.
Just so you know, Derek and I did have a meeting with, a gentleman from next.
Thank you, Mark.
Nice presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good night.
Good
Safe
night.
travels. From the company passport, and we learned a lot more about what they offer. And I had to go off before I actually heard about how much it costs. So that I don't know. So maybe we'll debrief.
Sure.
And we'll discuss this at our next work
Another
session.
work session or something.
Would that be
Yeah,
okay?
and I don't think I have an exact number for cost as much, but they would take percentages or whatever, it's how 30 cents or something like that.
If it was percentages of, for instance, if we charged an hour or $1 an hour for parking, they would charge the people who were parking and $1.10. And then that's how they make their right, but.
Or come up, yeah,
Um,
right.
The visitors center, I totally forgot to talk about, to look at that when we were rewriting the traffic ordinance, and
Yeah.
I think that's where it is at. They've been asking if they can have one space in the summer dedicated for their volunteers, because their volunteers are typically over 75.
Yeah.
And don't want to do a lot of walking, and I
I don't see a big deal with that, they were providing a pretty valuable
Yeah.
service
can we.
anyways for visitors, so they're there for visitors, so I think you could, I don't know if we really need to go traffic ordinance, you just put
A sign,
a sign up,
Do we
I
have
mean,
to
the harbor
amend
master has a
traffic
sign.
ordinance
Huh?
we
Do we
don't,
have to amend the traffic ordinance?
I
to
don't think the
justify a
harbor
sign?
master designated spot is in the traffic ordinance, and I think they
That's
have
a
a
great spot
spot
for the
for
visitor center, it's never used.
you know, or the assistant harbor master, I know there's some already marked out spots.
Okay,
So you could easily just, it's cost of the signage
so do
to
we,
say,
do we even have to vote on it, or do we just?
I
Say-
think that
say,
you
"Mr.
wanna
Town
vote.
Manager,
Now, you just,
maybe-
you can vote for it, cause ideally we'll need to get one of those signs that say, well, I don't know, we don't wanna say reserved for visitor center, cause then people going to visitor center will park in there. So you gotta
Staff.
figure out,
Right.
staff,
Visitor
right,
staff.
right, visitor center
And I
staff.
do have a chance just to look back at the traffic ordinance, just to see if we have
We'll just
any
Yeah.
anything about the harbor master.
Yeah, I
or
don't
anything
think
like
we
that. I just
would
wanna
on
make sure
that,
So-
but yeah,
I don't think we
We're
don't
above
need
board.
to vote on that before the end of May, but
right.
if we're going to have that in place, we should have it in place. I think they usually open around the morning.
Sure.
And so we should.
Cause do we have any designated spots that say for visitor center parking?
Yeah,
But that's a tough one, just because, you know, enforcing it, but it would be nice to have sometimes, you know, a couple spots on that too, so like. You had, let's say we created that on like an old rim. You know, you put the sign pole, you weld it in, and then you could have the visitor volunteer on one side, close to the cannon, let's say, and I don't know where and on the other side, you know, 30-minute parking, visitor center, visitor or whatever.
we could do
Yeah,
that.
and that way
That's a
you'd
good
have a
idea.
designated spot also for people that
Just wanna go. to
just wanna
visitors.
go ask some questions, right?
That's a good idea.
Go in and out.
The handicapped is by the bathroom.
Right, okay, yeah,
Okay.
all right, and
All right.
there's another in between, I think.
Okay,
The
so,
Acadia document, but I'm just thinking, that might be another good thing when you're talking about visitors, really for them to stop and get information. For 30 seconds, you get them out of their car and that's the key, right? Because then they get this something like, oh geez, cause you know, I've been to various places when I've gone for rides or whatever, I've driven through like the town dock area, even in Castine, and said, geez, there's no parking. I don't really want, but if I'm gonna stop and all of a sudden go, oh, I got a pamphlet or this or that. Then I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go park someplace else and then come back, now I know what's to offer. I'm talking about people that just happen upon us.
yeah.
No,
yeah.
not those people that know
Right.
what's going on,
Okay,
yeah.
so do we want to talk about this again at a work session so that we can have this? So we'll put
I
this
think we
on
need to be
our
forward,
next
especially if we
work
have to
session.
amend traffic ordinance.
There's nothing in the
You
ordinance.
do,
You've read the
yeah.
whole ordinance just now?
Oh, I just read the parking spot about the town dock.
Okay, we're gonna put this.
So
on our
I don't
next
know if you need a work session as much as you can just discuss it in the next meeting, vote on it if you want. If there's a bunch of people in the public that have opinions, let's say at the meeting, like Mark will have something to say probably.
Do you
You know,
get your argument?
Right, and I'm thinking that's a good use of the spots.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, okay,
It's
so
just
I'll,
PLA.
then I'll put it on the March 3rd agenda. And we will discuss it then.
Okay,
Okay, March 3rd agenda, okay.
what do we have to do on the tree ordinance? I know we need to change it
No,
somewhat.
yeah, so the thing about the tree ordinance is the canopy group,
Mm-hmm,
because we have this Project Canopy grant, and we're looking at woodlands all over Castine, and they've hired their forester, and they've figured out their areas that they're gonna do their project. But they're looking for, guidance from the select board about the tree ordinance as to, do we want the tree ordinance to be an entire woodland ordinance? Like, because right now we have an elm tree ordinance.
yeah,
Only deals with elm trees. So what they're asking of us is, do we want to incorporate all woodlands into the tree ordinance? Or do we want to keep the elm tree ordinance in the elm tree committee doing what they do? And then create a separate woodland or canopy ordinance and have a different committee that looked at that.
I think it should be two separate, I'll tell you
You
why.
think so?
Well, because the elm tree ordinance is a public shade tree ordinance, and we would call it that, let's say a public shade tree ordinance, because we do need to rename it, we need to add in referrals to these other trees we're planting that aren't elms anymore, that are public shade trees. And add also language about the board of selectmen can deem A dangerous tree, that's the other thing we need to do to that ordinance, It just popped in my head, cause it's on my notes, of all my reports, cause we discussed when I first got here. And I think the other ordinance, I'm not even sure necessarily, cause I think I got off that meeting, cause I had my crown before they get into that discussion, but to me, shade trees versus other ordinances like that should be different, right?
Different.
I think so, cause I'm not even sure what that ordinance is gonna say.
Okay,
Is it going, I'm not sure what the intent of the other Project Canopy ordinance is as much.
I am very comfortable with creating another committee to deal with
Right.
the overall canopy.
But that's what I don't know what is the
Well,
intent
their
of the thing
intent-
off the top of my head, and I,
A lot of their intent is, how we care for our woodland areas
right,
on neck, how we deal with invasive species. And that, those two things primarily. So, but I was not, I certainly was not gonna say to somebody, oh yeah, we can create a whole other committee, because I didn't know how my town manager felt about that.
well, I don't have,
Just,
well, I understand that, but I'm still anxious to see, like,
Right.
on the whole.
Right.
What that means,
Well-
and I think there's two different, you have two different, you have a forest that's normally for recreation
Right,
or for
literally.
value for
right,
the wood on it,
Right.
let's say, cause if I was a private wood owner. And then you have the shade tree, and I think the two missions
I agree.
100% different.
they're different.
And the
But-
shade tree is about appearance and
Yeah.
character, and the other one's about. I don't know, forest fire protection,
Yeah,
prevention and
I agree.
managing species and whatever on that, and it's more of a. Private owner, well, in this case, in some case, private owner stewards of the land or even the
Or
town,
the
so I
town.
think there's
Okay.
two different missions there.
I'm great with that, and they are having a public engagement
Mhm.
Who's
on
they?
the Canopy Grant Committee on, because they got the grant. So this
Right.
committee, this group of stakeholders is having a public engagement on April the 3rd. At, I believe it is 6 p.m. at Emerson Hall.
Yeah, they're together.
Tell
Say
every-
April 3rd.
April 3rd, to tell everybody what they're doing and
Yep,
how they're
six.
looking at.
Should we hear what they have to say and then
Yeah.
decide if it's
Well, I
on the
think
committee
so.
Well,
afterward?
now
or what do you-
I would like to do that, because now that we're not having to try to figure out how to make how to make the Elm Tree Committee or Elm Tree ordinance their ordinance as well. Like, because I agree that I'm great with having two distinct committees, because I believe that it's two distinct.
Now, I don't know what Dawn thinks on it, but I just think that there's.
Well,
There could very easily be somebody more interested in the shade trees that have no interest in.
sure,
Well, and you're
recreational.
using grant money too, and so I imagine we have to obviously be very careful how we disperse that grant money, so.
right,
It might make sense that there's a select group of people who are charged with overseeing
right.
the mission of that grant and disbursement.
we-
The Elm Tree Committee may not be.
That may not be that good. And if we create a new ordinance, then we have to have a town meeting for the town to.
I would think so, yeah, depending on what it says, and I don't think
But I-
tree ordinances fall under
But I
board.
But I think that's okay, but I
Yeah.
think if we need to, we can have a special town meeting one night to do this, so, okay.
And,
yes.
yeah, and so I wanna learn a little bit more on what that ordinance is gonna be, because I don't know if it's gonna be a zoning thing, a regulatory, land use
Yeah,
type
so
of thing,
let's-
so yeah.
You know, what the
Yeah.
committee wants to do. Okay, the Castine Golf Club, everybody saw Jeff Stonn's reply.
Yeah, I assumed you would read that. at the
I
next-
will,
The next
again,
meeting.
I will put my foot in my mouth again, no, I'll do it again.
Yeah, but that was new, that wasn't something that had
It
already
was
been sent to
something
us.
new right now, this was new information,
So he's
so
trying to
I
clear
will,
up
I will
some
read that. and
Comments
we will
from the last meeting.
hopefully
Yeah.
clear it up.
Yeah,
So we will take care of that, just wanted to. let
would it be
everybody
worth
know.
inviting him to come to the next meeting?
It might,
Should maybe answer questions that might come up, because we wouldn't necessarily be the ones to answer those questions.
an invitation.
And,
So Friday, back to the tree thing, I don't know what you're doing Friday morning, but I have a meeting with risk management. I'm gonna get their screen ready, but I can't join the tree committee on Friday morning at 9. So I don't know, and Dawn may have something there also that, to weigh in on that.
If you send me the Zoom, I'll.
Yeah, I don't think I've created one, and
Okay,
I swear I had the project canopy meeting before then, but I don't, I think it's next week.
I will do that.
All right.
And then we started adjusting, okay, and the final thing is the town meeting. And you weren't here on Friday, but we had a good conversation.
The town gathering.
Yeah, and we had a long conversation, and what we came up with was Monday, June 2nd.
Yep,
Instead of a select board meeting,
what was that, a Monday?
Monday, June 2nd, in the evening, instead of a select board meeting, we will have.
So what happened to a Saturday? We
So-
were looking at the, what, the 31st or the 7th?
31st can't, cause I have a big Scrabble tournament.
Scrabble
I've
tournament.
already
The
reserved and
31st, yeah,
advertised.
right, that's a big thing.
As an annual thing.
And what about Saturday, June 7th?
There was something else on
There's
Saturday,
something
June
else.
7th, I don't remember, but Emerson Hall is full. So if we would want to, we can do it on the evening of the 2nd. If for some reason it runs late and we need to finish it, we can finish it on the 3rd.
Yeah, you just adjourn to a time certain,
And then
whatever.
we could do a select board meeting later that week. The staff felt that they didn't want to pursue, some of the staff felt that they didn't want to pursue a Saturday either, to continue to pursue. They felt like we used to do it at night, we might as well just, we're not gonna do it on the date.
I'm concerned on a Monday, June 2nd, it's still a school night for kids, it's a work night for a lot of people. And I worry that we are not going to get the participation that we would get from the diverse population in town on a Monday night, as opposed to a Saturday morning. And we've had really healthy
I think.
participation on Saturday mornings for many years, particularly when we put the school board budget first.
Yeah.
Because people would arrive, they stay for that, then they stay for the town, we used to have it the reverse. I'm concerned if, as we move into the evening, we may be pressing people's patience and not have the representation that we would want.
We may, what was on the 7th? I don't remember.
I thought there was a vacation involved, but I don't know
Oh,
for sure.
yeah, Sue will be
I'm thinking about it.
on the 7th. Sue will have it.
Can we proceed without, she has to be
She's
here?
the town clerk, she's
Okay.
gotta check in and do all that.
So if there's a Scrabble tournament on the 31st, because I understand a lot of people come in from away
It's big, yeah.
for that. So what if, is there a chance that we use a different venue? Like during COVID, we used MMA
Mhm.
as
I-
the venue. We had
Well,
Delano
You work there,
Auditorium.
you could probably find out.
No, really,
I mean,
we could like.
Delano, is that the one in the Alphon Center downstairs?
No, that's where the town gallery is. Delano's the auditorium at like 325 seats
Oh.
in the auditorium.
Well, that's a big, no, at the end of the hall from where we meet town and gown, it's a big
That's
lecture
the
hall there
nineteen
too.
fifty-four lecture hall that has like 74.
Oh, that's
so
it?
too
Okay, that's
small.
too
We
small.
we
But,
used the field house
And we've done the field house.
for
We've done it for school.
During COVID.
During COVID,
during
we did,
COVID, we
yeah,
used the field house.
right.
I mean,
So if it's a site
So,
location.
so that would be the
31st,
31st, if we could have it someplace on campus. I don't care if it's on a night or a day, to be honest,
Well,
I've had them both on days, and tell you the truth,
I didn't
it's a difficult one either way.
write down, I don't know if I have my town account. I didn't write down in my book what the concerns were for each date.
My wife just sent me a text.
Time for you to go home?
Well, she just got home from 9 days away.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, you better go home. Tell her.
Is she got supper ready?
Amy,
I'll be over.
I'm
I think we said
I'm fine
leftovers.
for doing.
No, forget it. I'm not
If we can
not
get-
coming over for leftover soup,
if
Mark.
we
I'll make you
get
something
into
sometime. Have a good night.
You too.
Thanks.
Fine.
Great care.
Yeah.
We just were not thinking outside the box that day, so. We weren't thinking
Yeah.
about doing it at another venue. Would you be okay with doing it?
I don't
mean,
care where it is.
we did it at MMA all through COVID, so
Yeah.
it's not like it's new.
Yeah, and a lot
We
of,
can do it out on top of the landfill and I'll be happy as long as it's not raining.
Still right.
you know, we have to talk to them, there may be some share rental, I'm not sure how that was done during COVID, they have a supply of chairs, but Rachel, the person that, and I don't know if it's Sue or Aaron, important is Derek, but Rachel Curtoni,
Right, yeah.
is their conference director. And so she would be the one to speak with, to see, if there are any uses going on that. Okay.
Is yeah,
They're gonna hurt.
I was gonna say, for a big lecture
Seriously,
hall
yeah.
room, that's the key, right?
What's
So
that?
I said, whatever the big lecture hall rooms or wherever.
They're only, at the academy, they're all only about 75 seats for each one, yeah.
Except for Delano.
And down those literally like 325.
But that's a theater, that's a theater.
That's the theater.
Right,
You
yeah.
have like a traditional stage.
Yeah, yeah.
I still think that
It's
our
a
town
circuit.
meetings bring more people than that, perhaps.
300?
Well, think about how many people were upstairs. I don't know. Maybe I
They
don't
have
do
numbers
that.
on it. They had to check in most of the people.
I think we had a couple.
So,
And 20,
I think
30,
it's not a day that we
70,
wanna be
80,
turning
90.
anyone
I bet
away.
there's 200 at the last town meeting.
But, okay.
I'd be curious what the numbers are, because if they were that, then that might be okay, but I don't wanna
Alright.
turn anybody away or not.
No, we can't
No, we
really,
can't
so
exceed the
it'll be
5%.
standing room only though, right?
So,
All right, I will. Don't laugh.
Well, put this on the next agenda for March 3rd already. We need to have a decision by
Yeah,
March 3rd.
I will.
So Rachel will have an idea.
Okay.
Are
May
the
30th.
students gone then?
on May 31st?
Yeah, they must be.
Yeah, we have graduation on May 3rd, and then
Yeah.
Rachel oversees the summer events.
You hear that noise?
Yeah,
That's that's our mini split outside. Might be a bad bearing.
okay. I thought that,
Making a racket outside.
is that, all right,
Yeah, it's that unit
Oh.
right there.
I should've-
I'm gonna contact the service company.
maybe, I was
She
gonna
doesn't
say,
talk.
mini split.
Yeah, okay, we'll turn it off.
Service.
Okay, so.
Yeah, that's Dave's world. While they're here, I'll have them look at the,
Oh,
I'll talk hot water heaters for them. I
Okay.
think that's who put those in.
All right, well, we need to, get Amy home too. so-
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay, that sounds good.
all right, so March 3rd, so who's gonna contact Rachel? See about space? Amy gonna walk in the Levitt?
No,
Or whatever.
No, I can't, I'm away for the next few days, so I think.
Oh, that's right, you are. I
Yeah.
apologize.
It's,
I
that's
read you.
okay.
It's okay. I will. send
Otherwise I
Jeff-
would, I just don't wanna delay.
I will
any
send
decision.
Jess an invitation and I will call Rachel.
Do you have her contact information? Okay, good.
I just called her about.
Do I have anything on my list?
Delano for something else. I don't.
Or do I
think so.
just need to call,
You get to tell Sue and Karen.
that we don't know yet?
Right, I
Yes.
said that's all that we know right now
Okay,
is that.
right. We
Yeah,
don't
I know what
yet.
you're gonna tell them.
Under
You're telling them it's all
discussion.
Roberta's fault.
No, I'm not. I don't know yet.
No,
Uh,
yeah. If you'll tell Sue and Karen that I'm looking into having it at MMA.
All right, and I will tell you if there's some type of an issue, if there's a controversy or something like
And
that.
ask Rachel about shares as well. Yeah, remember we did it during COVID, we had to run them out.
Well, you might have on that one, I mean, well, there are bleachers people can sit in. I've had people sit in bleachers.
Yeah, we don't have any, like, we have some on the field, but not.
Well, they must have a bunch of chairs, cause I was in the field house for the for the orientation this year and it was filled up with,
For orientation,
yeah.
yeah, but a lot of times we run from Wallace events, we do have an internal stock of folding chairs.
Yeah,
But it's not unlimited, and so Rachel can give you the inventory of what that is.
But
but if we're in that theater, they're gonna have theater seats.
Well,
Delano is theater seat.
Right.
If we find out, if we find out from Sue, how many people were there last year?
Yeah,
Yeah,
And if it's less than 300,
right, and Rachel can give you the count, but I think we're 320 or so in Delano. She
and if
can let
it's
you know.
less than 300, then I'll ask Rachel about Delano as well.
so wait, you wanna go Fieldhouse first, Delano second?
You wanna go Delano?
I'd go Delano first, I don't, if you have more than 300 people, I will be amazed. I almost wanna bet some serious cash that that's not a possibility. I'm gonna find out what the numbers have been in the past,
Okay.
because that is a great turnout, I'm proud of Castine, if you guys are pulling in a third of the population. Literally, that's,
The first ever candidate forum
Yeah.
that I went to in this town had about 300 people at it.
oh, see,
And
that's
I
great,
was floored. Yeah.
yeah, that's
And
great.
especially if there are significant topics on the town warrant, and no, it will bring people.
Yeah.
It will bring
I mean,
people, so.
Even for info meetings in Bucksport, when the mill was closing, right, or a tax impact, and everything else, they couldn't fill their auditorium for that, and that literally should have shut that town down.
All right.
So,
Any
yeah.
state-
If you wanna, hey, motion to adjourn,
Oh,
even though
motion
it
to
doesn't really
adjourn.
matter, but it does
Second,
for
uh-huh.
notes.
Sure. Aye.